Hello, and welcome to The Well Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Kohls. I'm a clinical mental health counselor and counselor educator here at Bethany Lutheran College. And The Well Mind is a space for meaningful conversations about a broad range of wellness-related topics, with a special emphasis on our mental health. Season 2 continues as I'm joined by one of our newest faculty members. Latrina Radler came on this spring to teach psychopathology and diagnosis, and I'm really excited to get to share her and her story with the Well Mind community. Now, true to form, we begin by unpacking some of her early experiences that really drove her passion for the field of mental health, marriage and family counseling, and addiction and recovery. She talks a bit about her background in social work, especially as it relates to the care that she was providing following Hurricane Katrina. Latrina is from Louisiana and continues to provide clinical services there while she's teaching in our program. One of her specialty areas is working with addiction and recovery, and she talks a bit about understanding how this is really a systemic issue. And addiction doesn't just impact one person, the person experiencing that addiction, but it affects the whole family system as well as the larger community system. So that's a really interesting aspect to our conversation today, that Latrina is able to share some insights from her clinical work and her expertise. Now, Latrina is always reading something as well, probably a few somethings. And so we talk a bit about what's on her reading list right now and how she's implementing that in her clinical practice or teaching, or some of the seminars and retreats that she creates for couples as well. So our conversation is broad, but also has some real depth to it, and I'm excited to be able to share it with you today. So here is my conversation with Latrina Radler on the Well Mind. Hello, Latrina. Welcome to the Well Mind podcast. It's great to have you here. This really has been a project that I have enjoyed working on, primarily because I get to talk to neat, interesting people, and having you come on the Well Mind is especially important to me because you're one of our newest faculty in the clinical mental health counseling program. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better through this process and getting to share you with the Well Mind community.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm so excited to be a part of the Bethany team.
Yeah. So it was just back in January this year when you started your first course with us, currently teaching a diagnostic course and focusing on psychopathology within our mental health field. So this is one of our upper division type level courses. It's a bit more technical, and we'll get into your clinical background and experience, certainly, but I think it's just wonderful to have you with your level of expertise and experience being able to teach that course for us specifically. So yeah, I think that's been great. I hope that can continue into the future as well.
Absolutely.
But I'm starting off all of these conversations just to get a little bit of a insight and picture of where you started when it comes to professional counseling. So I'd love for you to share a little bit, Latrina, just about what sparked your interest or passion for the field of mental health and helping and our discipline of counseling, or what drew you to our field.
Sure. So I come from a family of helpers, first of all, but I didn't know what counseling was. I didn't know what mental health counselors were and what they did. I had no idea, and I knew a few things. I knew we helped. I knew that what our goal on this earth to do was to help. That's what we were brought here to do. Um, and I thought I was supposed to be a teacher, though.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I knew I was smart, is what I knew. Um, but I knew my family helped. I knew they helped everybody. I knew they helped people in need. I knew we served our community. Um, And and I knew I was smart. And I said, so since I'm smart and since we help people, maybe I should help people learn. And so the entire time I went through like early schooling years, I knew I would be a teacher. So I decided to go to school to be a history teacher because I love history.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
remember a moment, I have the exact moment in my head. I was at a gas station pumping gas, and I said, God, you made me this way. You created me. What am I supposed to be doing? What am I doing here? And I was in college, and the next thing you know, I'm a social work major.
Hmm. Okay.
And then I'm introduced to the helping professions.
Yeah.
And it just all took off from there. I'm
Sure.
introduced to the helping professions. I find out what social work is. One of my professors is a social worker and a counselor. He had both degrees.
Okay.
And he explains to me the difference.
Mm.
And he tells me, you know, you can do this or you can do that, but here are the differences.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, this is astonishing. But it's that conversation at the gas tank with God who just revealed to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
revealed to me because I am in this family full of people who help
Mm.
in different ways. They all have different professions and careers, but everybody helps.
Yeah. That's the common
And
thread
that's the
through
common
this.
thread.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody helps. But I'm this middle child
Okay.
who seeks to please,
Yeah.
and I am just here, you know, the smart kid. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
keep going back to like the smart kid, and I don't know what to do with this. I don't want to be a
Yeah.
doctor or a lawyer. I don't want to do any of that. What do I do with this, God?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, literally, it's just like that
Yeah. Yeah.
major change,
Yeah.
and it was done. And it just went from there. My undergraduate internship was at a homeless shelter
Okay.
for women and children.
Okay.
And it just so happened to be the semester of Hurricane Katrina.
Mm.
Because I would have been going to get my master's in social work, but I
Okay.
was working with homeless families. And it was right after, and I'm in Louisiana, and it was right after Hurricane Katrina, and I'm working with women and children before the storm, actually. Then
Mm.
Katrina happened,
Mm.
and it changed everything we were doing.
Yeah.
And I am now not just placing them, but I'm helping to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like needing to graduate and figure out life's plan. No, I'm not going to social work school.
Okay.
No, I'm
Okay.
applying somewhere else.
Yeah. That's so interesting because, like, social work has that bachelor's level, programming. And so then that becomes like a real option for folks as they think
Mhm.
about entering into the helping field. It seems really accessible. And social workers do a ton, like you were pointing out with that one faculty, like they had their social work background, but they were also a counselor. A lot of the clinics or agencies that I've worked with in the past, clinical social workers are definitely a percentage of the providers there, and they bring an important lens that focuses really on larger systems within communities. And so, hearing you have this experience at the homeless shelter, working with women and kids, especially uh, in the midst of and following a natural disaster, like that social work piece is so important to be able to connect people with services and resources and really meet some of those basic needs. But it sounds like you were hearing also a lot of their stories and their
Mhm.
experiences, and they were really sharing that with you. And because you were living in that community as well, like you were also being affected by that, right? I mean, it's
Yes,
not like you were
absolutely.
coming in from a different state and, doing Red Cross stuff. I mean, this is your home too. So, how did you, as you were just sitting with those, your clients at the time, those moms and the kids, like, how did you navigate those experiences, knowing that you were also being affected by the ripple effects of Hurricane Katrina?
I mean, I believe that that is likely when I learned to compartmentalize.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Um, and because my family lives in both New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so many of my family members at the time had to come and live with us in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
sister had gone to live in Tennessee. Like it was a lot.
Yeah. So
So
many people were displaced.
so many people were displaced. It was all over the news. Technology was not what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
It was not. So it's like at that point, that is when I learned to compartmentalize. And then so much was happening right in front of my eyes
Yeah.
because I was in Hammond, Louisiana, which it's like a triangle. It's
Okay.
Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Hammond. So
Okay.
we were kind of getting it from all of the ways. We
Sure.
were all impacted
Yeah.
in some way, family, friends, the school, and this year's the 20th anniversary as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I say 2 decades now.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. And so realizing that that was my entrance really
Mm-hmm.
into the helping profession.
I mean,
And
that's
hearing
diving
that,
into the deep end of the pool, Latrina, for sure.
I dove right
Disaster
in.
mental health and caring for people amidst those kind of tremendously devastating circumstances.
I dove right in, and then I graduated that December,
Okay.
and I took a job to start the Monday after graduation
Mm.
at a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And immediately we would get clients that were just displaced because of the storm
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
So my career just kind of took off.
Yep. And did you go right from your undergraduate into grad school at that point, or did you have a
I
break in
took
between?
one semester off
Okay.
because I was planning a wedding.
I was going to say one semester is not much of a break, but at least, it wasn't rolling right into the next semester.
I took once I needed to wrap my head around everything that had just happened.
Sure.
And I was at the psych hospital and I was their discharge planner, but also the person that worked with all of their families. My
Mm-hmm.
focus was working with families. So as clients came in, I was the first person to get all of their information and coordinate with families what would happen next.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would happen next? Where would you go? Where would you live? How would you get your needs met?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Help the family to understand their diagnosis.
Mm.
And so that's why diagnosis and pathology became so ingrained in me because I
Yep.
had to learn early on in my career how to help everyone to understand what this really looks like within a family.
Sure. Well, and so there's a couple of really important pieces there. One, uh, I know that, I mean, from at least a licensing standpoint, your professional identity is in that marriage and family therapy
Mhm.
uh, perspective. And so, hearing social work internship stuff, working with moms and kids, and so working with that side of the family system, and then psychiatric care oftentimes is involving a lot of relatives or
Mhm.
close family, because it, it it impacts the whole system when
Yeah.
somebody's struggling with their mental health. And I certainly had that experience when I worked in our behavioral health hospital that I worked in back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You know, doing a lot of family meetings for the kids and teens that were on the inpatient unit, and
Mhm.
yeah, just explaining. a diagnosis or explaining the treatment process or why things are happening the way that they are and why the recommendations are what they are. That's a real process, and
Mhm.
people are in acute crisis at that point
Yes.
too. Stress is maybe higher than it ever has been because a loved one is inpatient.
Mhm.
So yeah, those two important pieces of continuing to work with the family unit and really understanding things from a clinical perspective as well to be able to make that understandable and accessible for those clients that you were serving.
Correct.
And that seems like a thread that
It
has
is.
continued on for you in your trajectory as a helper too.
Absolutely. And that really informed my decision on going back to get my master's. That really helped to inform it, because I immediately went back in the summer to get my degree in marriage and family therapy.
Yeah.
So I started and it kind of took off from there. And I wanted to make sure that I focused and honed in on families, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it took off. And my program was 2.5 years because
Okay.
I did the MFT track,
Yep.
and all of my internships and everything were in addictions. And
Oh,
my
okay.
focus was on addictions within the family.
Yep.
Always looking at that extra thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That extra thing within the family. And because I always, we always know there's always going to be something else there. If there is some type of discord, if there is some type of chaos, there is that thing that needs to be addressed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, even in a couple, what is that extra thing that we are not addressing before we can address that unit? And it's really followed me throughout my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, my two loves, my two passions are families and addictions.
Yeah.
I cannot escape them. I wouldn't escape them. And
Yeah.
anytime I, say, well, we're trained as generalists, we can do anything, so on and so forth. When you look at it, when you find your niche, when you really get to that thing that makes you the most passionate, for
Yeah.
me, it is always going to be families and addictions. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe I am so blessed to have been in this for 20 years. And I am able at this point, my practice is really families, couples, and addictions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And it, I can do this all night. I love it. And I think that is so important for practitioners. It is so important for practitioners to find the thing that you can wake up every day and be proud of doing.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm.
population that you are interested in working with.
Yeah.
Not the thing that you just have to work with because you need to make a little money,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
but that thing that drives you.
Yeah. And that I think uh, it's interesting because I'm just as I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting a little bit on my own experience, and because certainly marriage and family work was very important to me as I entered into grad school, and I had the opportunity during my grad school. This is like you a little while ago. So, clinical mental health counseling as a discipline didn't
Mm.
even exist back then. We were called community counselors.
Yes.
And so my program had both community counseling and an MFT, a marriage and family therapy track. And so I was like, I don't know. They both seem really important. So I ended up taking, track or courses in both tracks so that when I graduated, I'm like, okay, I can go that LMFT route in terms of
Mhm.
licensing, or I can go the LPC or LPCC route. And I just happened to be in a state that unfortunately the LMFT license just wasn't as strong at that point. They didn't have, um, the advocacy, I guess, with at the state level to have that. But yeah, thinking about working with marriages and family systems, that's been consistent throughout my career. But I always thought, yeah, working with couples would be where I would end up in a primary fashion. But finding working with the whole family, especially as I've worked with kids and teens. So it was like I was close in grad school and thinking of what it would look like, but it shifted a little bit
Yeah.
too. And so I wonder for you, it sounds like that happened too, because it was like families was the constant, but then this other layer of addiction got
Mhm.
put in there as well. And so, what do you think it is about working with an issue of addiction and addressing things within a family system? What do you think it is about that work in particular that is really continuing to stoke that passion that you have?
Well, so glad you asked that. So we know that over 1 in 3 Americans suffer with addiction, right? And so there's no way we can shake that and
No, it's
avoid that.
pervasive.
It's pervasive. Um, so if we're looking at any system, it's going to be there, whether somebody says it out loud or not. It
Mm-hmm.
is there. Um, I more than families, I do work with couples. So I'm gonna clarify that now I'm with more couples than families.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
even in the couples,
Yeah.
I see addiction more than anything, whether it is current addiction or
Mm.
past addiction that they have not quite addressed, maybe stopped and never dealt with the addictive personality traits
Oh,
or
sure.
addictive behaviors, and they are still dealing with those old behaviors. And
Yeah.
so I believe that it is so pervasive that if not asked and addressed at some point in the therapeutic process, that we may be derailed
Mm.
or all of our work may go undone.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that layer has to be looked at, and that question must be asked. If
Mm-hmm.
we ask any of the new and upcoming clinicians, look at the intake paperwork on any of our clinics that they're working at.
Sure.
The question is going to be there: are there any substances,
Mm-hmm.
current or past? That's because it needs to be asked.
Yeah.
That's because it needs to be asked. And so I don't know if there's a switch that happened, but that layer being added in grad school, it was necessary. When I had to find a site and they put me there as a practicum student, it's very interesting because the way it happened, I got that as a practicum site, and then I had to take a semester. They put a semester in between, and then I started internship. But the practicum site kept me on. They
Mm. Mm-hmm.
hired me.
Okay.
They actually in Louisiana we were able to get. I was able to get certified as an addiction. Uh, I got a separate addictions licensure, so
Okay.
they kept me to continue working.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just went on through my addiction licensure through that point. But I am so glad that that happened because it prepared me for what I was going to see.
Mm.
And not only it did it prepare me, I believe I was just armored, and it set me on this career path that I didn't know I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it at first. I didn't want to touch
Yeah.
addictions, and I didn't want to touch grief. Those were two things I kept saying, no, nope, 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 nope.
Mm.
Oh, wow, did we need it? I think we all need some level of knowledge when working with families
Yeah.
of addictions,
Yeah.
because it's so pervasive. There's no way to get around it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too because it's both, obviously present issues with substance abuse or dependency is going to undermine or derail any, you know, work that you're doing for a relationship, but that you pointed out past experiences with addiction and dependency also can show up in maybe more subtle ways when the behaviors or some of the underlying traits aren't addressed. And so sometimes folks think recovery is just not using anymore, and it sounds like you're adding another layer to that. And I wonder if you could just in the next couple of minutes here, be able to unpack that a little bit of like when we think about recovery, that it isn't just not using anymore.
Yeah, it's not just abstinence from the substance or abstinence from the thing,
Yeah,
because it's not just substance use,
sure.
right?
Behavioral
It's
issues as
not
well.
just stopping the thing, it's changing your thought patterns, it's changing your behaviors, it's changing all of the things. And so, if you did not change that addictive behavior, if you did not change the addictive thought patterns, then you still have that faulty thinking and you still have the faulty behaviors that will still lead you to the faulty outcome.
Mm.
So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance,
Yeah.
if you in your addiction, if that person in their addiction always wanted to control everything and then ended up in fights because they had a lack of control, well, in their sobriety, because they didn't address the control issues, they will still get into fights because they can't control anything.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Stopping the substance isn't the problem always, isn't the only problem. You want to stop the substance. That's not the only problem. You want to address why the substance was in play anyway. What
Yeah.
was that substance trying to control? Why were you going to that substance?
Yeah.
We have to peel back all the layers. We have to go there. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we're in our family system, we ignore it because, oh, well, they stopped drinking. We're so happy they put the bottle down.
Okay.
Sure, we're happy
Yeah.
they put the bottle down, but are they still angry?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing now that they put that bottle down?
Sure.
So we have to be able to be unafraid to confront all of the things.
Well, and
Like
that,
all of
yeah,
it.
because I think, like you're thinking about, that couple or a family, and just the fact that somebody has stopped using, whether that's alcohol or some other illicit substance or a
Mhm.
behavior, like it's almost like I don't want to talk about that again because there's
Right.
so much fear around it too. Fear of what if we talk about it, is that going to make them
Real.
go back to it and do it,
Right.
return to that behavior or that use. And so fear keeps people really stuck from being able to really heal and move forward. So how do you begin to address that fear aspect of things?
Well, you have to normalize the discussion. Normalize the discussion of the fact that this is an illness.
Mm,
This is the disease of addiction.
yeah.
We're not being quiet about cancer.
Mm,
So why are we being quiet about this?
yeah.
We want to be able to talk about things freely, just like mental illness. So often in families, we don't speak out loud about the things we need to.
Yeah.
We want to normalize having conversations in families,
Mm-hmm.
having dialogue about things. When we're not open with each other and and that's why I started off, so I said, what is that other thing?
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is, we need to be able to talk about the things. So with my couples and with my families, I speak with them about how do we have open, honest, healthy communication, putting everything on the table, mental illness, substance abuse, all of those things, because oftentimes we are afraid to really be open and honest about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you may say, oh, it's putting a label on it. It's not putting a label on it. It is being open and transparent so that we can, number one, have accountability
Mm,
from our loved ones, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So when we're honest about that disease, they can hold us accountable to our behaviors, our actions, so on.
Yeah.
So we want to be held accountable if we really want to get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Accountability is something that oftentimes gets avoided.
Hmm.
Um, but in that true kind of path of recovery, accountability and responsibility for our actions is a huge part of that. And so that you can't talk about those things, you can't get to those things unless you bring that out into the light.
Right.
One of the beautiful things that I got to participate with in the past is there was a nonprofit group in Sioux Falls that I helped out for a while with. And one of their big events during the year was this March into the Light. And it was all about destigmatizing, talking about addiction issues, and really promoting recovery and resilience in the community. And so this march was actually, we'd start downtown in Sioux Falls pre-dawn, so it was all dark out, and then the march and walk would start, and we'd go through downtown and kind of down by the river. In Sioux Falls is where we would end as the sun was coming up. And it was this beautiful metaphor of like, these things are dark and they're difficult to deal with and talk about. But if we can come together as a community and bring this into the light for us to be able to talk about in a authentic and honest way, that's where growth and healing can come from. Absolutely. And so it was just this beautiful thing that we did for a number of years. And I would also share that same story with clients when they come into counseling and we're struggling with like, I'm afraid to bring this up, or I'm afraid to talk about this. So I love this message that you have of, in order for us to be able to get to the point of accountability and responsibility and healing, we have to be able to talk about it. It's not, we're talking about cancer. Cancer is a pretty scary thing, but we have to talk about that. And it's the same thing with our mental health and issues of addiction and substance, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, Latrina, but okay. I know that you are a big reader, a big listener of to books and things. And so I'm just curious, what is it that you are picking up right now? What are you finding some enjoyment in, but either personally or professionally? I don't know. I know you're always reading something.
Okay. So personally, right now, I am listening to Harlem Rhapsody. Now that is Langston Hughes, not Langston Hughes, I'm sorry, W.E.B. Du Bois. That was the one I read last week. W.E.B. Du Bois story. It's a historical fiction book that I'm listening to personally right now.
Okay.
And I'm also listening to Hold Me Tight. It is a professional book regarding connection. And I am absolutely loving that for my couples. I've listened and read that one before, but I'm listening it again.
Okay. As
I prepare for a couples retreat that I am putting together right now. For,
that's so exciting.
Summer. Yes, I did it a few years ago, and I am altering it. It's all about communication and attachment. Just how our attachment informs how we communicate, but learning how your partner communicates both ways. Mm-hmm. So I am bringing in some new resources for when I offer it again this year. So I'm working on that.
That's fantastic. It sounds like we're going to have to record another podcast because I want to unpack all of that with you too. That sounds fantastic.
I'd be so happy to come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
But
so that's the book, All About Love?
All About Love, Bell Hooks. Okay. So I have all of my resources that I'm using again right now for that. So All About Love and Attached are the two that I'm using right now.
All right. I'm going to link those in the show notes for our conversation. So even though we didn't get to talk about those, it sounds like those are good recommendations and something that you're diving into.
Yes. And this is the last one. Those two are rereads, but this one I was just introduced to. Okay. Surrounded by Idiots. Have you ever read this?
That is quite the title.
So, I thought
I haven't read it.
Satire. I thought it would be satire. It absolutely is not. It is a book to help us define people based on, they use a color system. Okay. And you use your personality type, but it's all about, again, communication styles, the way we work, and it helps you to understand yourself, your colleagues, your family members. But again, I'm using this again to learn how we work together,
Yeah.
how we are able to sit together. Because again, I believe that all people are able to work together if we understand each other. I believe
Hmm.
that there should not be any division
Yeah.
between us or amongst
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Um, and so,
Well, just for the title alone, I mean, it is a little, I don't know. I mean, I think the term is clickbait, but
it
it's a
is
book,
clickbait.
it's something that if I saw that, I'd probably pull it off the shelf at Barnes and Noble and take a look at it. So, Surrounded
I
by Idiots.
love it.
Now I'll put that on my reading list.
I love it.
Yeah.
I do. So,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it's a great read. It is a really great read. So I would definitely recommend this to anyone. I've actually recommended it to about 5 clients in
Okay.
the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Latrina, it has been such a fun time. It always flies by so quickly, but thank you so much for sharing yourself here on our on the WellMind podcast, and for being a part of our clinical mental health counseling program here at Bethany. It's been such a joy having you teach this semester for us, and I look forward to having you back on, and we can talk about this marriage retreat that you're putting together and all those facets of communication that you're unpacking with those couples. So that would be really, really fun.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Latrina.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Latrina for joining the WellMind community. That was such a fun conversation. I really enjoyed getting to visit with her, getting to know her more, and sharing that with each of you. So thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed the conversation, please give us a 5-star rating, hit that like button, and subscribe so that you get all the new episodes in your podcast platform as soon as they're released. Next week, I'm going to be sharing a conversation with a previous guest. Dr. Joshua Mears is back on the podcast. I really had fun in our first conversation a couple of years ago now, but talking about faith integration and clinical practice for counseling. We continue some of those threads in our chat, but share about some of his new endeavors and his role in the counseling program, both his history with us as well as his current contribution. So that'll be a really fun one to be able to share as well. So thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well.